Yeah, so my name is Dr. Randy Arnau. I'm a professor in the psychology department. And I've been here quite a while. And I also have a coaching company called Headstrong Coaching that really focuses on a lot of what my research area is as a psychologist and basically the science of happiness, stress, coping, well-being. And so we decided I'd talk a little bit about mindfulness today. So I'm going to start and just talk a little bit about what mindfulness is, and then I'll talk a little bit about why you should care about mindfulness, what good does it do for us, and then we'll talk some about kind of dig deeper into it and how you can go about cultivating mindfulness. And if you guys want, we'll take a few minutes and I'll walk you through a mindfulness meditation as well in a little bit. And feel free to just jump in and ask questions. I'm used to having slides and lecturing, but I'm perfectly fine just kind of having a conversation as well. So there's a lot of different definitions of mindfulness, and this is my favorite. And it's also the one that's used most frequently in scientific research on mindfulness. And this is the definition from Jon Kabat-Zinn. And he describes it as mindfulness is simply paying attention, but in a particular way. So paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. And so all three of those components are really important. It's about the ability to focus your attention and focus it on the present moment. And that means sensations, things going on around you, as well as things going on inside of you, physical sensations of your body, and especially what's going on in your mind, thoughts and emotions. And doing it in a way where you're not judging the present moment as positive or negative. So a few other quotes that I like that sort of touch on important aspects of mindfulness. Sylvia Boorstein said, "It's mindfulness is the aware, balanced acceptance of the present experience, and it's opening to or receiving the present moment, whether pleasant or unpleasant, just as it is, without clinging to it or rejecting it." So a lot of our unhappiness comes not just really specific necessarily from negative events or negative emotions, negative thoughts, but also trying to reject or get out of the present moment when it's uncomfortable, or when things are going really well, trying to cling to it and hold on to it, because we all know, good comes and goes and bad comes and goes. And so trying to reject the present moment when it's uncomfortable, or trying to hold on to the present moment when it's positive, can lead to unhappiness. That's basically the same thing in some different words. One of my favorite authors that writes about mindfulness is Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Buddhist monk. He's been around quite a while. He has tons of books, and he's an excellent writer. He does a really good job of explaining mindfulness and how to practice mindfulness and cultivate it. But I like this quote by him where he says, "It shows us what's happening in our bodies, our emotions, and our minds, and in the world. And through mindfulness, we avoid harming ourselves and other people." This is a really important aspect of mindfulness too that I like, and this is a quote from Dan Siegel. He says, "Mindfulness in its most general sense is about waking up from a life on automatic and being sensitive to novelty in our everyday experiences." So this is a really key component of mindfulness that is why it's so important. Is so many of us, day in and day out, we sort of live on autopilot, and we just sort of react to things and just go through the motions, and we find ourselves doing that sometimes. And if you can become more mindful, you can break away from that sort of automatic type of experience. And then be able to really make informed decisions about how you want to react or behave in certain situations, or rather respond. So it allows you to be able to respond thoughtfully rather than just react. Does that make sense?
So how long have you, so you feel you've been studying mindfulness, right, as a part of your research, right? So have you seen like a shift from like when cell phones and social media of mindfulness and then like before? Like, did you know what it was like before cell phones and social media to be mindful?
I didn't really become real interested in mindfulness until after cell phones, to be honest. This was this research focus of mine sort of came about a little. It wasn't like at the beginning of my career. It came about sort of probably halfway through my career. But yeah, cell phones are. I love cell phones. I love technology, but they make being mindful much more difficult. They help us to become mindless, very easily. So yeah, I don't really know the answer to that question, but it is an interesting one. Okay, so why be mindful? So in my class, I go into a lot of different studies, but I'm just going to kind of summarize here some of what we know based on the scientific research on mindfulness. And we know, and there's a ton of research on this now, training yourself to be more mindful. It can help reduce depression and anxiety. It can definitely help you reduce stress, become more resilient to stress. Studies have shown it helps people with chronic pain cope with their chronic pain. It also actually improves our ability to focus and sustain attention. And just in general, people who are more mindful tend to be happier and report higher levels of general well-being. It can improve creative thinking, problem solving. I don't think I listed it here, but it can increase productivity at work. In fact, there are some major companies that have people on staff to train their employees in like mindfulness meditation. Like I know Google is one of them. It increases dopamine levels in the brain. It improves sleep, which is really important. It actually increases empathy and compassion for both yourself and other people. And this is a really interesting one here, this last one. There's a brain imaging research that has shown that it actually can protect against age-related declines in brain functioning. They found that like with an 8-week mindfulness training course, people actually had increases in brain volume in certain parts of the brain. One part of the brain that's important for focus and attention, another one that's important for like empathy and perspective taking. And it actually shows the amygdala in the brain, which is really responsible for our primal negative emotions like fear and rage. The amygdala actually shrinks with meditation. And the really interesting thing that they found was when they compared people who had been meditating chronically, like for 15 to 20 years at least, they looked at it and they broke it down, these different brain areas. I think in this they were looking at the cerebral cortex, but the brains of the 50-year-old meditators looked like the brains of like 25-year-olds. So it definitely is protective against some of the deterioration in brain functioning that we see as you get older. So, I like to walk through those because, if there's one thing from the science of happiness that if someone could only do one thing, to try to make themselves happier and more satisfied with their life and improve their well-being, I would say it's to become more mindful. So that brings us to the question of how do you become more mindful? And there's a lot of different ways, and I'm going to walk you through some of those and talk. And there's some different types of mindfulness meditation, and I would say meditation is the best way to develop mindfulness. So I like to sometimes when I do this take a minute and give you a quick little pop quiz to see what you know about mindfulness. How many of you meditate? Nobody? How many of you have meditated before? Okay. So think about these questions. True or false? One of the goals of meditation is to think about nothing. False? Okay. That one actually is false. Meditation trains us to eliminate negative emotions and be happy all the time. True or false?
False.
False, okay. Meditation is an inherently religious practice. False, okay. Meditation trains us to live only in the present and not think about the past or the future. False, okay. You guys seem to know about meditation. They're actually all false. These are actually, so y'all are more well informed than a lot of people. These are actually common myths about meditation. People think that they've got to try to think about nothing. That's impossible. You can't stop thoughts. The point of meditation is to help you actually focus on, notice what those thoughts are without being reactive to them. It doesn't try to eliminate negative emotions. We don't want to eliminate negative emotions. It's an important part of life. Meditation is a practice in a number of religions, and it's completely compatible with religion or any spiritual path, but it's not inherently religious, and it can be completely secular, and you still get all the benefits of it. So that's sometimes a concern sometimes with people practicing meditation. I know with my mother, I think a long time ago, she was worried about that. She was worried about the same thing with yoga. She's like, was it a religion? Well, not really. Although it can be. And this is one that's surprising too. One of the meditation is actually not intended to make you feel relaxed, but it is often a side effect of meditation. Frequently people feel relaxed when they meditate, but it's not the intention. And there will be times if you start meditating regularly, there'll be times where you feel relaxed. There'll be some times where you feel like pumped up and energized afterwards. Other times you may feel bored. Sometimes you might fall asleep. That's a problem I had when I first started meditating. And sometimes you may have negative emotions. So it just depends. So the point is it's not intended to induce relaxation. The intent is to help you become better at focusing your attention and on the present moment and not be judgmental of that present moment, whatever it may be. So how do you become more mindful? And I mentioned in my psychology of happiness class that I teach in the psych department, we focus on things that can actually be changed. So, there are measures out there that could, give you a questionnaire and see how mindful you are. But the important thing is you can become more mindful with practice. It's just think of it as a skill like any other skill. It requires training. And the primary training is mindfulness meditation. There are some other ways to practice and get better at it other than meditation that I'll talk about in a bit. So what are types of mindfulness meditation? And I should say there are other types of meditation other than mindfulness meditation. I think all types of meditation are beneficial, but not all types are focused on increasing mindfulness per se. So like there's Zen meditation, although I think with any type of meditation, you're going to get better at mindfulness, but Zen meditation, transcendental meditation. I'm blanking on a couple of the others. But when we talk about mindfulness meditation, there's a lot of varieties, but the key is that the common denominator across all of them is you're focusing your attention on something. So for instance, the easiest, and well, I shouldn't say easy, it's not easy to do, but the simplest way to get started is awareness of breath meditation. And you're basically just sitting and focusing on your breath. And you're trying to maintain that focus on your breath. So for instance, you can focus on where you feel the breath the most, you know, and your diaphragm, your abdomen. Maybe you feel the cool air going through your nose in and out, and you're just trying to focus on that breath. And that's it. You're not trying to change the breath. You're not trying to do anything with the breath except be aware of it. And just know, if you've never done this before, when you start that, your mind's going to wander. And sometimes beginners will get frustrated and will say, I'm just not cut out for meditation because my mind wanders. And I'll tell them that's exactly why you're doing meditation. You're practicing maintaining that focus. And if your mind didn't wander, you wouldn't need to do meditation. So the key is you have cues for like, oh, when you realize your mind has wandered, you just think, oh, my mind's wandering, and then you go back to focusing on your breath. There's what's called a body scan meditation, and that's where you're focusing on your just bodily physical sensations. You just like start at the top of your head and you just visualize slowly scanning down and tuning into all parts of your body, noticing what feels good, what feels relaxed, what parts of your body feel tense, what parts of your body may be painful. And you just start at the head and gradually go down to the toes. There's various types of visualizations, you know, where you're just envisioning certain scenes. There's some I've done where you envision like liquid sunlight coming and filling up your body. Loving kindness meditation is where you're focusing on compassion and love for other people. And again, the common denominator across all these is you're focusing on something. You can walk mindfully, so there's walking meditation. You can mindfully eat, so there's like mindful eating. Yoga is, I think you did a thing on yoga last time, Sam. Yoga is good for cultivating mindfulness. You know, because you're usually focusing on your breath, but you're also focusing on the poses you're in and the bodily sensations. Really, once you start practicing this a lot, you can intentionally focus on the present moment no matter what you're doing, and it can be a practice of meditation. Here's one of the key takeaways I like to explain too is as you get better, as you get more mindful, you stop reacting and you start responding. So like in psychology, we have like, you know, stimulus response type of thing where you get kind of conditioned to respond to certain people, situations, thoughts, emotions in a certain way, and you just react. Whereas if you're mindful, then you can notice the situation and the thoughts and emotions, and you think, okay, I can tell I'm getting angry. And you're able to sort of take a step back and think about how you really want to respond rather than just reacting with, you know, being pissed off, leaving the room, yelling at somebody. What I used to do years ago is there was a person I worked with that I could not stand and didn't get along with, and sometimes they would do things that would piss me off, and I would shoot out emails to the listserv in our department for everybody to see. And it's not that I didn't feel justified in that emotional reaction, but it made things more difficult for me. It definitely didn't solve the problem, and it made things worse for me because then I had to deal with more fallout. And that's the first thing I noticed when I really started meditating regularly, is I became less reactive to those situations. And I think, okay, I'm feeling pretty pissed off right now. I'm going to type out what I'd like to say, and I'm going to save it until tomorrow, and I'll look at it again and see if I'd really want to send it. And I've never had any of them that I looked at and said, yeah, that's a good idea, let's send that. They all got deleted. So that's just kind of an example. With anxiety, you know, that's something a lot of people deal with. It's something I dealt with probably at least half of my life or more. You know, anxiety is really about the avoidance of threatening situations. And if you're feeling anxious, you can use mindfulness techniques again to, you know, one of the things you learn with mindfulness meditation is emotions are just emotions. Emotions are just emotions that come and go. Thoughts are just thoughts. They aren't necessarily facts. You know, sometimes people get in those in a situation that triggers negative thoughts like, oh, I shouldn't be here. I'm not really good enough for this. I'm not good at this. I'm not a good person. People don't like me. You get those negative thoughts. With mindfulness, you start to be able to notice those thoughts and realize, okay, those are just thoughts because I'm in a bad mood, but they're not necessarily fact. So mindfulness can help put distance between your emotions and the rest of you, just to be able to sort of give yourself the opportunity to ground yourself. And then the great thing about that is, you know, and I would say, like, anytime you get into a situation where you have like negative emotions triggered, you'll get to where you do this sort of without thinking after you meditate a lot, but just focus on your breath for a minute. Say, okay, this is not good, and just take one breath and focus on it. And that can be enough to make you feel grounded. And then, you know, if it's something, let's say it's a difficult conversation that you need to have, or something that you need to do that other people are going to approve of, it allows you to be able to then go ahead and do it anyway, despite the anxiety, because, you know, you realize, okay, I'm experiencing these negative emotions and they come and go, but I need to do this thing right now, even though it's not comfortable. Practically speaking, yeah, we'll have time. I'll walk you through a little meditation here in just a minute. But you mentioned cell phones. The one good thing about it is there's all these apps and things. So you don't necessarily have to go out and like find yourself a meditation teacher. There's great apps out there. Calm is a really good one. I'd say it's especially good for sleep if you have problems sleeping. Balance is one that I just discovered. I think it's relatively new, but I've used it off and on, and it's really excellent in that it actually, it's different from just having an app where it's like you can choose from all these meditations and you hear the same thing every time. It actually has like lessons, like, okay, this is your first session, here's your second one, and it teaches you the skills and it builds on it as you go. I think it's about $70 a year, but they're offering a free whole year right now. Insight Timer has a free version and a paid version, but the free version has over 45,000 free meditations. That can be a little bit overwhelming if you've never done it before, just sifting through and choosing what you want. There's an app called UCLA Mindful. UCLA has a mindfulness research institute, and they have some good meditations on there. By far, my favorite is Headspace. The guy that founded Headspace and that writes and does a lot of the audios for the meditations studied as a Buddhist monk for at least a couple of years. And then he decided that he didn't want to do that the rest of his life, and that mindfulness was just such a great gift. He said, I didn't want to just keep it to myself. I wanted to come back and like do something to teach the masses mindfulness. And it again also there's lots of packs you can choose from, like there's a beginner series, an intermediate, and once you graduate from those, you can choose like a stress pack or productivity or focus or sleep. And again, it also, will teach you the skills, and each one's a little different. You build on them. It also has a bunch of like sleep casts. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to those. They're just stories read in a real soothing voice. For me, I have a lot of problems with insomnia, and they help me fall asleep.
I do that when I can't sleep.
Yeah.
Or I'll turn on like the ocean and just like.
Yeah. But yeah, and so Headspace has a whole sleep cast section in there that's really good. And I guess maybe it's partly my favorite because I've used it for so long. I've used it for several years. It's about it's $70 a year normally, but not too long ago they started offering a student rate, and it's $9.99 a year for students as well. I mean, it's worth it to me for $70. As long as you use it fairly regularly, I feel like I get my money out of it. So $10 is a steal for that. Any questions, comments? Maybe.
Just out of curiosity, what would you say for you? I'm assuming you've definitely done your fair share of meditation. What would you say meditation has helped you to do, especially as it relates to what you do now with, I guess, with students, with, I guess, the stressors of, I guess, being in a pandemic? How has it kind of helped you process these things?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing that it helped me with was like what I talked about, like reacting, when I'd get really angry, because I tend to be an anxious person, not nearly so much now as I used to be, but I spent a lot of my life being really anxious, and it's helped a lot with that. I'd say it helps. I'm trying to think with students. I feel like I'm able to sort of connect with students a little bit more, like, have more empathy, and I can sort of initiate difficult conversations with students if I need to, like if somebody's having major problems in the course or mental health issues. Of course, part of that comfort, it comes from being a psychologist, but I used to sort of have that anxiety about like, well, I'm not their therapist, I'm their teacher. But so I think that sort of opened that up, and it's really helped me get over like things that I used to sort of be afraid of. We all have kind of fears in our life, and so it's helped me to be able to do things that I really wanted to do, even though I was fearful or anxious, just because I had that grounding. And the cool thing with like fears is once you like do them anyway, a few times, the fear starts to diminish. But sometimes it's just getting over that hurdle of doing something the first time. I was afraid of doing yoga the very first time I did it, which was strange because I'd been working out for years, but then when I got there in front on the yoga mat sitting down, I was like, okay, all these people are looking at me, and I felt exposed. And it was actually one of my trainers at the pain center that got me to start yoga.
It can be so hard for people to do yoga, especially if they have no background or. I mean, it's supposed to be like the least judgmental class, but people have a hard time going to a class and almost like being vulnerable in a way.
It is a lot of vulnerability, and I've never experienced judgment from others in the class or the instructors. It's more judgment from yourself, or thinking people are like, oh, they're not good at this, they don't know what they're doing. So when I first started yoga, the anxiety was like making sure I didn't look stupid. Now, I can go to yoga and I can sort of try to push my boundaries and like what poses I can do, and I'm okay with like falling down. And I think mindfulness helps with that.
Do you think like with exercise, like there's research out there that says you know, to get the benefits of exercise, you have to work out 3 days a week for 100, if you have 150 minutes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any research out there that shows like what minimum recommendations are for mindfulness to get the benefits?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I usually mention that. A lot of people, they sort of have the conception that you've got to like totally immerse yourself. You got to go to like 3-day workshops where you're meditating all day or meditating an hour a day, things like that. The vast majority of this, now there are some studies that are like 8-week programs where it's a couple times a week. That was like the one they did with where you're really where they're looking at brain changes. But the vast majority of the studies looking at all those things that meditation correlates with, it's like 10 or 15 minutes a day.
But every day?
Every day is better, but it doesn't have to be. I'd say even if you can do 10 minutes a day, a few days a week, the consistency is more important than how long you spend doing it. If you do it for a few days a week and then quit for a few weeks, a few days a week, you're not going to get much out of it. But if you get consistent with it, yeah, and a friend of mine, Dr. Duck Vong, he would teach, he used to teach meditation to his bariatric surgery patients. And he would tell them, it was like, if you can't find 10 minutes a day to meditate, you need to be meditating 20 minutes a day. And the thing is, people also, they say, I don't have time, I got all this work to do. You will get time back because you'll be more efficient at your work. Now, I should point out, just if, you know, you start doing it 10 minutes a day, you're not all of a sudden, it's not like you're going to flip a switch and you're going to be real good at mindfulness. It's a skill. It's just like going to the gym and training. It takes practice and consistent practice. Yeah, I've been doing it for several years and I'm still got a long way to go, but I've come a long way. So yeah, just be careful not to expect real quick results.
I have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
So I find almost like mental health, a lot of pushback from meditation, especially like, you know, I have my students do it in my health classes, and a lot of the times, you know, I read because they'll do a meditation assignment and then discuss about it. So when I read their discussion, a lot of the students are not open to it, and almost like in the same way mental health is like people will be ashamed or like just don't want to try it or give it a try. I mean, do you find that at all too, that people kind of have that like mindset of like, well, I don't need to meditate, or I don't need to be mindfulness, or it's boring, or
that attitude towards meditation is prevalent. I'd say I don't run into it a lot because I think the people I teach it sort of self-select. Like people that sign up for Psychology of Happiness, they want to learn stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
That's one reason I talk about myths. Because I think, you know, if you do have that pushback, I would say see if you can find out what the pushback is. And I like to start with talking about the myths are. It's not religion. It's just a skill, like any other skill that you can develop.
Majority of the time, the students say that they just don't want to, or they can't turn their minds off, and that they're thinking about a million other things, and you know, and then they say it's not for me.
That's the most common reason people quit, because they can't turn their mind off. But that's not. And then I say, good. That's why you're learning to meditate.
Exactly.
And successful meditation is not turning your mind off. It's being able to pay attention to what's going on in the mind. And also I tell them, you know, even in the guided meditations I'll do, like, I don't say like if your mind wanders, I say when your mind wanders. Like we're focusing on the breath, and I'll say when your mind wanders, when you notice your mind wandering, just note it. Say, oh, I was thinking, or I was, you know, my mind was wandering, and then go back to the breath. And that is part of the process of learning to be mindful. It's not just learning to focus your attention, but being able to catch yourself when your mind's wandering. As you get and do more meditation, you'll find yourself, even when you're not meditating, you'll think, oh, wait a minute, my mind's drifting off, or I'm reacting to a negative thought. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I think with people, just some one-on-one work to clarify misconceptions. It can be difficult if you're just like, like I can't do a lot of one-on-one stuff with students but I do sort of talk about that's going to come up,
Yeah.
sort of try to prevent them thinking that they're not good at it or can't do it. Other questions?
So you say that when you're meditating, the point's not to turn your mind off. What is it that you should be doing with your thoughts as they come? Do you experience the thought and emotion and then decide at some point to let it go? Or do you sit with it? What would you say about that?
I would say, thoughts and emotions are going to come and go. And because of that, your attention is going to get taken off what you're trying to focus on in the meditation, whether it's your breath or your body or whatnot. Thoughts are going to come and go, and just notice them and then let them go, and then go back to what you're trying to focus on. It's kind of hard to describe, and I can talk about meditation all day, but you're not really going to learn what it's like until you actually start doing it. But yeah, I mean, like the focus on the breath, there are going to be thoughts coming and going. As you get better at it, you can focus on the breath, and the thoughts are just kind of in the background. Before you get good at it, you're going to get distracted by them and forget you're even meditating. But that's part of the process of learning. It's just from having those cues, and the good guided meditations will have those cues when your mind wanders. Do this. So there's different techniques, but one technique is just go back to the breath. Another one that I like is called noting. It's like when you notice that you've been distracted by thoughts, just think, oh, that's thinking, and then go back. Or if you're distracted by an emotional state, like, okay, that's feeling, and then go back. Or it could even be feeling like a physical, like pain, that you start focusing on, like, okay, that's a sensation, that was feeling as well. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Do you want to do a short meditation? All right, we'll just do a simple, like about a 5-minute meditation then, just so you can kind of get a feel for it. Okay, so to start off, would you just find a comfortable position? And I'm going to starting with the eyes open, and just have kind of a soft focus, sort of noticing the space around you. And then start with just a nice deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Another deep breath. Out through the mouth. And then on the next out breath, just go ahead and gently let your eyes close. For a moment, just noticing the physical sensations. Notice your body pressing down against the chair. Your feet on the floor. Your arms, your hands resting on your legs or the table. Just noticing that physical sensation. And now just starting to notice your breath. Not trying to breathe in any particular way or change how you're breathing, just noticing the breath. noticing where you can feel the breath the strongest. It might be your diaphragm. It might be the sensation of your abdomen rising and falling. It might be your chest rising and falling. Just focusing on the in and out of your breath. And if it helps you maintain focus, you can just starting to count the breath. So 1 with the in breath, 2 with the out breath. Just up to a count of 6, and then starting with 1 again. And when you find your mind wandering, just notice and acknowledge that your mind was wandering and go back to the counting of the breaths. And now, just for a moment, just release that attention on your breath and just let your mind do whatever it wants to do. Now just bringing your attention back to your body, back to that sensation of your body pressing onto the chair under you. Noticing the space around you, any sounds or smells. And then just in your own time, gently opening your eyes again. How was that experience? Any observations, questions about what it felt like? Was it difficult to maintain the focus?
At the beginning, it was.
Oh, and then it got better?
At the beginning,
Okay.
yeah. And then whenever you're talking about like the body sensations,
Mm-hmm.
and I started paying attention, I could feel my heart beat in my hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
The counting of the breaths helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Shifted focus after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good technique to use, especially when you're first starting out. I found even when I was counting that my mind would drift and I'd forget what number I was on. But which is fine. You just start back at 1 again. So your action step, if you want to start doing this, is I'd encourage you to download one of these apps. Headspace, even though it's real cheap for students, it does have like a 10-day free trial. Insight Timer has free ones. But yeah, just get one of the apps and just dive in and start doing it. Like I said, if you can do it 10 minutes a day, a few times a week. As long as you build the consistency, you'll definitely notice a difference. If you guys are interested in more videos, trainings, and things like this, you can follow me on my Facebook page. It's at Randy Headstrong. Instagram, randy.headstrongcoaching. Most of my stuff's on my Facebook page. I've got videos on mindfulness, gratitude, journaling, stuff on stress management, sleep, hygiene, things like that. And I am working on a online mindfulness training course that I'm going to be releasing probably in another month or so. So if you want to give me a follow, I post things. Well, I've been out of the habit lately, but generally a couple times a week. All right, well, guys, I appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Thanks for listening.